On this month's University of Arizona Futures in Digital Learning podcast, we reflect back on trends in digital learning for 2022 and look forward to what might be coming in 2023.
I've been seeing a lot more conversation about accessibility, bringing accessibility into your course design, as well as creating inclusive learning environments, embracing the diversity in your classroom. It seemed like there were a lot more workshops on that topic.
We are joined by Matt Romanowski and Stephanie Tamman of the Digital Learning team as we discuss the growth of inclusive pedagogy and the potential impact of augmented reality in education. Welcome, everybody, to our final podcast of 2022, or for some of you, the first podcast of 2023. This is the Futures in Digital Learning. I am Adam Davi, Instructional Design Manager at UCAT. I'm here with my co-host,
Ryan Hale, also an instructional designer with UCAT.
Excellent. And we are joined by a couple other folks here today. I'll let them introduce themselves. We're happy to have Matt and Stephanie join us. So Matt, go ahead and let us know who you are.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Matt Romanowski. I'm the director of instructional design for the digital learning team in UCAT.
Excellent. And Stephanie?
Yep. I am a fellow manager of instructional design over here at UCAT.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us. We thought it would be fun to have you both on for this wrap-up podcast for 2022. I also want to point out, I'm going to put him on the spot a little bit just because I can, that Matt waved at the Zoom camera, even though this is a podcast. But I want to make sure you all know that he waved hello to everyone.
I was actually going to comment on that the next time I spoke. Because I don't know how many podcasts I've listened to where they've said, and you can't see that because you're listening to us.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. We're a very welcoming group today. But today, like I said, this is a wrap up of 2022. And, as we look back at instructional design, online learning, trends in education, what stuck out to all of you from 2022 as being a major trend or something that happened over the past year?
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot more conversation about accessibility, bringing accessibility into your course design, as well as creating inclusive learning environments. So embracing the diversity in your classroom, having a lot more student voice. These are things I'm interested in. So maybe it's like selection bias, but even the conferences I attended, it seemed like there were a lot more workshops on that topic than even last year.
Yeah. And Stephanie, you created an inclusive pedagogy book club in the office this year too, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Awesome. Just for our listeners who might be interested, what books are you reading or what things have you brought up in that book club?
Yeah, we've only read one. We read Equity Talks at Equity Walk, which was all about higher ed and bringing in equity, across the campus, starting really from the top down, but then it it empowers all the readers to take steps within whatever their profession is on a campus.
Oh, very cool. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Good recommendation for anybody looking for something to read in the new year.
It's
Matt,
a pretty good audiobook too. That's how I listened to it or read it.
We need to get accessibility audiobooks read by celebrities. I want Tom Hanks, or James Earl Jones reading the accessibility workshop books.
Yeah. I always worry when I'm reading an academic book like that or some nonfiction book, I'm going to end up with Jason Alexander doing George Costanza. The professors that co-wrote the book did a pretty good job. I think they're professors, right, Steph? It's been a while.
Or administrators. Yeah.
Administrators. Yeah.
Well, Matt, what stood out for you over the past year?
I noticed similar trends when I was at EDUCAUSE this past October. I actually attended a really great presentation on diversity, equity, inclusion. The lead presenter was Andy Salaratelli, I believe is how you say it. I'll have to look that up, but by the time this comes out, that all matters. But he is, I think, a vice provost at Stanford, but based out of Colorado, and does a lot of great work in that area. I have been kind of following that as well. I joined Steph's group. It's been some really good conversations. And then another thing that has stood out to me is a lot of AR, VR type stuff that I've noticed at conferences. Back in June, I attended a site visit at Arizona State with Melody Buckner, and they brought us into their, I'm going to forget what the name of the lab is now, but it's their big AR, VR lab where you put the headsets on and the sensors, and I'm still doing visual things for all of you listeners. But you put headsets and sensors.
That's what it
Dreamscape,
is.
that's what it is. And so we got to fly through this alien habitat and perform a surgery on this iguana-looking alien, and then we went down into the ocean to help rescue a humpback whale, and it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. And then, not related to higher ed, but then Steph and I actually did a site visit out to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and participated in their AR simulation that they do. And, one of our colleagues received some friendly fire and from our squadron mates.
And some unfriendly fire.
Cool.
I think some was friendly and some was planned. Some was targeted.
But it was really cool to see the way that technology is being leveraged to teach skills where cost is a big prohibitor, whether it's cost of running a lab or cost of fueling up and flying a jet for a few hours. So that's been pretty cool to experience. And even in the conferences that I have attended, just walking through the exhibit halls, there's more of that going on. And I'm interested to see how that might transform into online education, where the students are, doing asynchronous learning, don't necessarily come into a lab all together to do it. So I think that's going to be a cool area to see grow.
I think that's, I'm curious to see how that grows too, because I think the idea of virtual learning environments is something that's growing. And we had earlier in the year, we had Dr. Rob Steffen as a guest on the podcast. And he's been doing some cool things with virtual learning environments as well, and using like video games as ways for students to, go back into ancient Rome and explore, what those cities look like back in the day and things like that. So I definitely think that's something that is gaining some steam and going to become even more popular. So it sounds fun to explore too.
And our Adobe team gifted us all with a wonderful AR Christmas card this year. There was a little QR code in the bottom of it, and you scanned it with your phone and held it up to the backdrop of the card, and magic happened. A little animation, and I don't know, was there sound? I couldn't hear anything in the room we were in, but
I just want to point out that more magic happened for some people than others, because I did not
for everybody.
I did not get polar bears in my little AR experience, but apparently everybody else did. I don't know what that's about.
It was planned, Adam.
Yeah.
Like, this guy has so much magic in his life. Let's reel him in.
I wasn't able to save the humpback whales, so I didn't get polar bears. I don't know.
What's really interesting that you mentioned that, Brian, though, is so, we all look at what that Adobe team created and, just are amazed by it. And then my kids came into my office yesterday and I was like, oh, check this thing out that some of my coworkers made. And they all kind of looked at it and they went, oh, cool. And then walked off. I was like, why are you not more impressed by this? But then I went to their open house last week, and they're a code to the future school, and they showed me all the programs that they wrote this year. I was like, that's why, because you are doing this every day. So it's kind of like those younger generations, they are already there.
Wow.
Well, and that's what I was thinking when you were talking about like using video game software to bring in the classroom and engage students. And I was thinking, well, what do students think about this? Because they've grown up with these video games. They're like, oh, cool. Like, now I get to use this cool video game that I really enjoy to learn math. I don't want to combine these worlds. So it'd be fun to get a student's perspective on all of this. And are we just being like the lame older adults that think that we're going to rap, about English and like we're connecting? Or is it like, are we, how far off are we hitting with these things?
Hey, there's always a place for smooth jazz in your physics lecture. Get that out of the way.
Well, considering we were workshopping MC Hammer references this morning for a newsletter title, I think we are that generation.
Oh, Brian missed that.
Yeah. I am all for bringing back Hammer Pants. By the way, I've been trying that for years to no avail.
And ladies and gentlemen, this will be Adam's last podcast with us.
I once tuned into a show called Hammerheads because I thought it was a show about MC Hammer fans. It was not. It was a construction-based show. So not even I didn't even get sharks out of it. It was just straight construction. I was very disappointed.
One of the things I wanna talk to Melody about is the World of Warcraft experience, because that game has been around since I'm gonna throw a number out, 2006. It's probably the wrong number. I know there have been different versions of World of Warcraft, but that game has had so many users and players on that game throughout double-digit millions of players. And my curiosity is, what is the hook? Why do so many people get hooked on that game? There have been studies about how playing certain games like that, you leave the real world and you're so immersed in this, you forget to get up for a couple of minutes and take a break. And people let relationships falter because they're stuck playing this online game, and that becomes their world. How do we leverage that kind of game playing so that it's not just kind of a slog of, go over to this tree and examine the bark and you get 1 oxygen point. Now you can move 2 steps to the left. And, how do we take that really World of Warcraft immersive experience and translate that into the education world and make it fun for students so that they want to meet the next NPC in their virtual world and continue playing whatever game for whatever course they're doing? I'm really curious about that and ways we can implement that in our learning.
I mean, so I'll jump in real quick because Stephanie and I attended kind of an interesting session at OLC Accelerate this past year, where the presenters talked about how they basically took their students on a virtual field trip to this. And Stephanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like a national park or something along those lines where they couldn't visit. The students couldn't visit physically during the semester, but they were able to do this virtually, and they created like a game around this visit with this virtual field trip where students were able to like dig up fossils and learn about the environment and all kinds of this fun stuff or interesting things that they couldn't do physically in person, right? And so I think like that's the draw, is that you're getting students out of a book or out of PowerPoint slides and you're putting them into these other worlds where they can learn and they can kind of learn on their own, right, at their own pace and see these things that they wouldn't normally get to see. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work involved in making this happen, but I think that's the draw, in my opinion. And the way I see it is that you're getting students kind of out of that lecture hall seat and allowing them to see these places.
I think the novelty of the experience is a way to engage students, just because it's like, oh, cool, I'm not just reading this PDF. Now I get to actually go do something. But I think that you should also like the competitiveness of it and the game of like in World of Warcraft, you are on teams, you're competing, you are like trying to earn certain badges. I don't know what they're called, but so it's you have that competition between you and classmates, or you form a team, and then also it's the exploration. So there's no linear movement through the experience. You go where you want to go, you do what you want to do. And so I think it takes so much work to create something like that, and you're recreating a world that's not something that's going to be done in a few weeks.
So do you think the future of learning would involve hiring game developers to work alongside instructional designers?
I think some people have already done that and are trying that. It's, a funding issue. Yeah. Higher ed's on a different budget than game developers.
Oh, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to kind of build on both of your comments because it's interesting. I used to love video games and then got into sports in high school and didn't have time for them. And then when I came back to them, that non-linear world turned me away from them because I was like, I've got to roam around. Like, I ain't got time for this. Like, I guess I go
right.
straight, jump over the castle, grab the flag. Like, so I really struggled with that until I got to college. And Brian, I think it's even older in 2006 because I remember as a freshman in 2000 having real internet for the first time and playing World of Warcraft with a few of my friends in the other dorms. And I was able to transition because it was a group activity. There was someone who kind of led the way, and I followed. Then I was like, all right, okay, I can handle this. I don't have to just wander aimlessly around Mario World. So I think that having that immersive group experience, I think that's going to be an important, because the same thing with Second Life. I stumbled my way through that, and the only few times that I enjoyed that experience was when it was kind of led by somebody going through there. So that's just to build on what you said, and then also to say, yeah, I think we are going to see more of that gamification, that interconnectivity. Who was it that it's an instructor that I used to work with, actually, and one of them was my history professors when I was an undergrad. Paul Milliman and Allison Futrell did the gamification of Age of Empires, where students could actually get college credit for courses. And I know a lot of effort and work went into that endeavor. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, it's happening on campus for sure.
And, kind of bringing it back, a lot of these games are, like World of Warcraft or Age of Empires, things like that. They're actually creating education versions of the game where it's not necessarily game based, but you have an option to go in and do the exploration, the nonlinear exploration, things like that. And it's built into the game itself for educators to use, which is, I think, kind of another route we're going to come seeing is, what are those licenses? When are they going to start coming through university wide or institution wide, things like that? But
Yeah,
I'm curious. Well, go for it, Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and it's not as new as people think it is, right? Like, there's a generation of about 20 years of American students who know what happened on westward expansion trails really well because during their free time they played Oregon Trail in school. And like multiplication, number munchers right here. Like, I was over there, and so I mean, gamification and immersive experiences have been around for a while. Now we're seeing that AR aspect of it that makes it a little bit more engaging.
I'm curious, like, kind of touching on that, the idea of the nonlinear concept of these games. If you think students enjoy that, as far as their courses go, or if you think students really do want like a linear progression through their courses, I'm torn. I was fortunate to teach a class this past semester, and it was an in-person class, and it was with honors students. And I feel like, and this could be just because they were honors students, but I feel like they really needed a linear progression of what was happening, why it was happening, what's next, and needed those step by step. So I don't know if that was just my small sample size that I saw, or if this is what students want. If we're, kind of overestimating this idea of a nonlinear progression. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, students are busy.
Yeah.
They want to know what's the checklist I need to get through.
Yeah.
How are you going to grade me? And then that's it. Like, I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be great to say students want to spend hours and hours immersed in a biology class, and maybe some do,
right?
But I would say most are just busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said many times as I was going through my doctoral program that the amount of attention that I paid to some of the things that we put a lot of time into as instructional designers would make my team cry. Knowing that as a student, I was just like, where's the stuff I have to do this week? Because I also have to take my son to practice, my daughter to dance, cook dinner, do the laundry. Like, so yeah, 100% Steph. But I also wonder though, Adam, because I would love to like side by side compare your class's experience with Melody's classes experience. I don't know if Melody's class craved linear or non-linear, but she didn't give it to them. She like every class was a surprise, and it's her feedback was that they enjoyed that. So it sometimes they may want something, but they don't know that the other thing's better for them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think keeping it a surprise forces the students to really pay attention because they don't know what's coming next. And if you can design your course around, those kind of surprises, this day we're going to stick to our little checklist. And then the next time we meet, that's all out the window. We're doing something different so that I can make sure you're being engaged and participating and whatnot, rather than just, oh, we're going to do another checklist. So, you can kind of snooze your way through this lesson. I think that's very important, very a cool way to run a class if you have the time to do it that way, and really the skill set to pull that off as well. Because not every instructor can do that or wants to do that,
Yeah.
And Melody, if you're listening, this is what we love about you. Because I also want to bring the example that when Melody spoke to the instructional design team last week, I don't think anyone knew where the next sentence was going to go. But it was a great ride, and it was informative, engaging, and entertaining, and
memorable.
You don't want to turn away, right? Because you don't know what you're going to miss. Right. So, it's like watching a Christopher Nolan movie where you're just like, you can't stop watching. You don't know what's going on, maybe, but you don't want to stop watching because then you'll really be confused.
Yeah, so like exploration and adventure, but with limits put on it, right? Like maybe that's what students want. And I've been in a class before where you're given very difficult problems. Yeah. Okay, go solve this. But if you're spending more than 15 minutes on it, then let the instructor know. Like that was the parameters we were given. Don't spend more than 15 minutes on a single question because like we don't want you spinning your wheels and burning out. So same sort of idea, like go explore this virtual world, but you've got 15 minutes, and then we've got to get like next target.
That's a good point. I've used this example many times in conversations and maybe, on previous episodes of this podcast, but I've read a lot around creativity studies, and we've all heard the phrase, think outside the box. And, as being like, oh, there's no limits, there's no restrictions on your creativity. But really, like, sometimes to be more creative, you need that box. You need those limits. You need that. You need those restrictions, those guidelines, kind of what you were talking about, Steph. Like, okay, you have 15 minutes to do this. There's your box, right? How can you get creative and be within that? So sometimes like thinking inside the box can lead to more creativity and can lead to, more engagement as well. So I always think that's an interesting kind of thought to have when this type of conversation comes up.
Well, it's like being in a class that what I hated most about classes where the maybe final project was a paper was choosing the topic. Because that was so hard when it was like, you can write about anything having to do with this class. You're like, well, that was so hard for me. So if the instructor like put some sort of limits on it, then I was like, okay, now I'm like off to the races and running.
Yeah. I think it's, like you said, students are busy. They don't have time to think about like what they could write about. They're like, just tell me what I should write about, right?
Yeah.
and then I'll do it.
Yeah. Right.
Thinking about these things that, the DEI, AR, VR, what's, let's look ahead. Let's project into 2023. just wild to think about in and of itself, right? We're about to enter 2023. What's next? What do we think is in store for us this year, this coming year?
I think that in the world of higher ed, we're seeing students want to have that flexible approach to learning where they can come on campus and have a interactive experience and collaborative experience with other students and instructors, but they also want to be able to absorb the content on their own time. So do the readings on their own time, watch lectures on their own time. And so that, what's being called the high flex model. I'm interested to see where that goes.
That's definitely interesting. Is it gonna, the high flex, I think everybody thought was gonna die out, once we kind of return to normal, air quotes. But you're right, the students want that. So
it's just like us,
stay?
right? We are all remote. Nobody in our office, yes, I want to be in person 5 days a week again. That was great.
Yeah.
So our office is sort of adapted a high flex model. So why not give it to the students?
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted that as an undergrad too.
Yeah.
I would rather watch the lectures and that's with 400 students on my own, and then go to the discussion section with 25 students on Friday, and then get into it.
Yeah. I think with that too, one of the things I'm noticing, and I think this is going to continue to grow, is, more and more professors becoming more proficient in the LMS. And I think if the pandemic did one thing, is it forced everybody to kind of get in there, at least from a higher ed standpoint. And so now you're seeing that kind of translate into all courses, not just online courses where, we knew students had to be, but now it's I can actually leverage some of these things, these tools that exist in the LMS that I didn't know about before, and use that even for my face-to-face course.
Definitely. And I think that extends to other tech tools. This medium, Zoom, we would have done this sitting around a circular table in Studio 1B or whatever it was. That's just how it would have happened. And now, we don't have to factor in travel time. We don't have to factor in it's a podcast, so we still don't have to factor in, hair.
I don't have to factor that in, but But yeah, I think, even just looking at something like office hours for professors, right? You don't have to necessarily have your office hours at a set time for students to come physically visit you in office hours, in your office to get help, because we have Zoom now, right? And they can, they don't have to come to campus. You can set a time that's convenient for both of you. It's, something that maybe didn't exist or didn't exist in, widespread use even 3 years ago.
Or you spent the first 10 minutes troubleshooting all the problems, and now everyone's proficient at that.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of looking ahead to different things, kind of setting up our podcast plan for the next year, different topics to talk about. And, this idea of neurodivergence has come up in readings that I've done, social learning, micro credentials, all of these things that I think, we're going to start to maybe see a little bit more of moving forward, and, what that looks like and how that might change our role in what we do as instructional designers. So what's any thoughts on, kind of what's ahead for us in the ID world? What should we be looking at? What should we be reading to get ahead of this?
That is a great question.
Yeah. And I guess the real question is, do we have time to do any of this reading as we're, building courses?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
It's so hard to predict the future, right? Where is the field going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good. We try to build in professional development into our workload so we can keep up with the field. We see that a lot with technology. Like a lot of
Yeah.
time technology is invented and we're like, okay, but how are we supposed to use that versus
Yeah.
like we have this problem and now we need a tech to fill that
Yeah.
problem.
Mhm.
So yeah, with neurodivergence, it's like that. I mean, customized learning plans has been a thing
Yeah.
people have talked about. Like it's coming, and we still
Mhm.
have not figured out the best way to do that. So it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see, is now the time. And it's not necessarily there's no tech to do it. It's just that there's no time to develop a class
Right.
that's like going to be customized for everybody in the class or train the facilitator. How do you facilitate something like this?
Yeah, and I'm a terrible futurist because every time I see something, I'm like, that was such an easy idea. Why didn't I invent that? But I can think of like some things that I've heard talked about around our office. There's a tech tool that is being looked at that's is it the peer review one? I think I thought there was one that way that, that's been a thorn in our side for years on what's the best way to do that. So I know that there's another opportunity to crack that puzzle that's coming down the road. Internally, we're looking at adjusting some of the language of how we describe things to be more in line with DEI standards. So I mean, that's stuff that I think we're going to continue to do campus wide as we look at our courses, is like, how can we do a better job of that, better usability, things like that. So I know those are coming.
One of the things that we've tried to do as a department in the past is leverage the strengths of the people in our department, right? We know who our accessibility experts are.
Yeah.
We know who our H5P experts are, things like that. So, I think that's important too when we look at all these things, right? And it can be overwhelming as an ID. Is like, oh, I got to know everything about all this stuff that's coming. And it's like, well, do you have to know everything, or can you leverage the experience and the strengths of the other people on your team? And I'll applaud our team and Matt, your leadership for the team as well, as empowering the people to kind of explore those things that interest them, and then to come back and teach the rest of us, right? And to be a resource for the rest of us. So I hope that continues into this new year as well, as we kind of look at some of these new concepts and ideas, and people can pick and choose what interests them and what gets their creative juices flowing.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm also looking forward to, we've spent a year and a half almost now merging digital learning and OIA, and now under UCAT, but we will really fully go forward together, I think, this next term. I mean, we officially merged this summer, but I think there is a lot of growing pains with people not knowing who did what and where to go for what. And I think that we're going to be able to do some really exciting work, like you said. And again, I continue to gesture on this podcast, but leveraging all the expertise that is across all of these teams, whether it's the instructional technology team or the LMS team or the educational development team. There's just so many smart people who have such specialized areas that they're experts in that you're right. I think we're going to do a lot of good for the university's faculty and by extension students in the new year. So I'm excited for that.
Me too. I think it's an exciting year coming down coming around the corner, and it's fun. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I enjoy what I do. I enjoy this role, this job. I think it's fun. I get to be creative. I get to work with a creative team. And so, that's something I'm looking forward to in the new year as well, is to continuing to learn from everybody else on our team and to have fun as well. I feel like we've gotten through almost an entire podcast and we haven't talked once about food, which is unusual for us on the podcast. And so, as for those of you who will probably be listening to this after the holidays, but maybe you want to keep that holiday food train rolling, I'm curious to hear from our guests today. What are your favorite holiday foods? What do you either make at home or you like to visit that other people make? What are some of your favorites here?
I'm a big like chocolate mint combo fan.
Okay.
Like mint chocolate chip ice cream is my favorite
Yeah.
flavor of ice cream. So this is my season. And I'll give a shout out. If you're in Tucson, to Transit Tea on Speedway and between Tucson and Campbell, they make, it's all like tea based beverages. They make a Merry Mint mocha tea latte that is so good. We'll hit them up.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
I never have been really into the big centerpiece meals, like turkey for Thanksgiving, ham for Christmas. That's what we do, but it's not like I've been looking forward to that all year. In all honesty, my favorite part about this stretch from Thanksgiving to Christmas is the snacks that get put out during the day. Like there's meat and cheese boards, the cheese ball my mother-in-law makes, the like spinach and artichoke dip. Like I could totally skip the meal and just park myself by the snacks all day. It's like my favorite time. And then, be dehydrated from all of the sodium.
Yeah.
So,
I'm with you on that. I like if there's a plate of manchego cheese out all day long, I would be in heaven. Like I don't need anything else. So.
You and my 2-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
she plants herself next to the cheese and crackers, and she's good.
Yeah. I mean, she's got good taste. Yeah. You're raising her right, Seth.
She did plow through some manchego last night. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It's my 2-year-old son is actually quite partial to meatballs. I think if we just put out a little plate of meatballs for him all day long, he'd be in heaven. That's maybe a trip to IKEA is in our future as well.
Yeah.
There you go.
That will be his Disneyland.
Yeah.
I should add that that snacking will also encompass a lot of college football.
Okay.
My son and I will watch football from 9 a.m. until 11 at night.
Nothing wrong with that. I played fantasy football for the first time in years this year. My team snuck into the playoffs and won the first round game. So now I'm in the semifinals. I'm, so as more interested that I've been in football in years.
My poor son took home our last place trophy for the second year in a row, and now he is fighting for life not to take home the last place in the consolation bracket trophy. It's been riddled with injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll get you every time. Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for coming on the podcast with us. It's always a fun. This is one of my favorite episodes that we do every year. Is this wrap up one, and the look ahead to the new year. So I look forward to continuing that tradition in 2023. And for those who are listening in the new year, thank you for continuing to listen. We appreciate it. We will, have a new episode for you each month here. And if there's things that you want to hear us talk about or guests that you would like to have us on, please let us know. We're always happy to get suggestions from our listeners. So thank you. Happy holidays, happy new year, and enjoy, everybody.
The Futures of Digital Learning podcast is a production of the University of Arizona University Center for Assessment, Teaching, and Technology. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas you'd like to share with our office, go to the Contact Us link on our website, ucatt.arizona.edu.